Hello, this is Luke Turner, and welcome back to another episode of Building an Exercise Tracking Web App from Scratch. So let's start by running the database. As we do, run the client-side code bundler, open a new tab, and run the server. And then we can start doing our thing. Wait, actually, this is the wrong... Oh no, that is right. Yeah. Not used to seeing this metrics log line here. Okie doke. So if I open the app, sign in with GitHub, and here we are. Let's look at our notes page, see what we want to do today. I've added a few things here between streams as usual. So under the what do I need to ship column, I previously just had like UX UI adjustments. I've kind of been thinking about the UI a little bit and split it out into some actual specific actionable adjustments that we can do. And so we can go through some of these and see how far we get today. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So to start with, one thing that I think we're going to want to fix is this removing unnecessary refreshes thing. I'd like to take care of that. So to illustrate what I mean, if I'm here in this sets page, and I do add new set, when I click that, did you see that kind of delay where after I clicked it, it's like, as the user, you're like, it looks like nothing happened. I just selected the new exercise. That's actually when it's reloading the page, right? So if we look at the today page here, when that exercise thing is clicked, it's doing this fetch. And then after the fetch is done, it's going to reload the page. So, while that fetch is happening, we don't actually see anything happening, which is a problem. And then also, when the page actually reloads, it's like that takes a moment as well, but also it's just not necessary. Like from the user's perspective, there might be like a flash of white or whatever, pardon me, because of the page reload. So it actually looks like that's not really happening though, which is nice. But still. So, for one thing, we basically have two options here, I guess, to sort of talk through what I'm thinking. One option is we could add a spinner or some kind of loading indicator where it's like, once you select something here, like the select gets disabled and there's like a little spinner that comes up or something to indicate that the backend is thinking, Or we can optimistically update the front end. So usually if I was doing something in React, I would want to optimistically update the front end. And what that means is, like say I want to add a new 5 params set here. The front end actually has all the information it needs to add that set. Like we know the list of exercises and what parameters they have. So we could immediately render a new row without waiting for the backend to do anything. So that's another option. The problem with that is there are certain things that we don't actually know until the backend creates them or whatever. Like an example is the ID. So if I create a new set here, that set's going to be assigned a unique ID. If we look at the sets schema here, set's going to be assigned a unique ID, and that's generated when it's created in the database. And then, when we first create this new row, it's like we don't know what that is, right? So then if the user then edits something on that row, we're not actually going to be able to send a request to the backend to edit the set because the set doesn't have an ID. So we kind of need something where it's like it creates the row optimistically, and then once the request comes back in from the backend saying, okay, it's created, then you can actually edit it and it actually has the ID associated with it. So it becomes like a two-step process. Now, like I said, if I was doing React, that's probably the approach that I would take. For this Pug plus Alpine front end, it's like more complex JavaScript interactions are kind of annoying. So I'm actually just going to try it and see how it feels and maybe kind of eject from that approach if it seems too difficult. Okay, so what do we want to do then? Basically for this set in sets, like this is the list of sets. And when somebody tries to add a set down here, it needs to actually add it to the local set. Where are those? Oh, that's not, this is actually server side. So that's all right. We could also have something where it's like, so we have exercises here. And then we could also have like sets or like, well, let's just try it and see. So we would have like sets as another property here in this user data or, front end data model. And then instead of each set in sets, it's like we could do that, or we could use a for, like a Alpine X4. So let's just see what we've got here. Alpine docs X4, this thing to iterate over them instead, and then we could dynamically change the list of sets and on the front end, The downside of that is it's not going to be fully server-side rendered anymore. So we can't really combine the two approaches where it's like you do this array of sets server-side rendered in Pug, and then you also hydrate that list client-side. Like with React, that kind of approach is possible because that's, it's designed with that server-side rendering hydration model. With Alpine, I don't really know if that's possible. So that's okay. We'll just, accept that this is going to be client-side rendered because the form is all client-side rendered anyway, like how the form fields work and stuff requires JavaScript. So we're not really hurting ourselves that much. Anyway, so let's see here. We're going to do, but I'm also thinking like there's a bit of a problem because it's really going to make a lot of these more like, so say I change this to being server-side rendered. This set is, or client-side iterated over, this set is going to be client-side bound as well. And so like this code will have to be moved to the client. A lot of this stuff will have to be moved to the client instead of happening on the server in the actual template. I'm not sure if that's really worth it. So what other option could we consider here? Well, one is we could have, instead of exposing all of the sets here like this, let's just try adding a new, we could call it like client sets, a new array of sets. And basically we're going to have this logic here to iterate over each set. And then we're also going to have below that, which, what is the indentation level here? So like up here, we're going to have a template. Template x4 equals client sets. Oh, it's like blank in blank. So it would be like set in client sets. we're going to render this, something like this. So let's actually copy this whole thing. We're definitely not going to reuse all of it though, because this is going to be a lot simpler. The has historical piece can go away entirely. And so like this data ID, set ID, I think we'll also need to add a key like this. And you know, it's interesting because like this has the colon ID or colon key. I wonder if that works in Pug set.id. It would be kind of like that. Or no, the key would be a JavaScript side expression, right? Yeah, set.id. And this we don't need. Yeah, and it's not a form. There's no history expanded. And we don't need this data. Basically what I'm thinking is we're going to have this be kind of like a, or maybe we do want that actually. Kind of like a stubbed out row is sort of what I'm thinking here. So, you know, if you add a new set, it'll like generate that stubbed out row and then reload the page and it's like the row will start to be enabled again. Not sure how I feel about that either. Yeah, let's actually, let me check something here in Bulmo docs. I might just do, instead of trying to actually replicate the row sort of, I might just do sort of like a little loading display, skeleton, they call it. Oh, there, look at this, skeleton. I wonder how well this will work in this case. So we would have, how do we use this? Div class skeleton block. Or you could do skeleton lines. You can also put skeleton on your components. Okay, so let's try this. So the simplest way to do this is just going to have a skeleton for the whole row. Like if I do div.grid and then I do .cell like this, and what was that? Is call spawn too? Yeah, let's keep that actually. And then I'll also add skeleton block. And let's see what that looks like. And for the client sets, I'm just going to have, like, I might have something where it's like new client set, or let's say new set skeleton. And we'll set it to true actually for starters, just so we can see what it looks like. And then here, this would be like X if new set skeleton. And we don't need the key anymore. And we definitely don't need, you know, that X data in there. And we don't need this either. This is just a plain grid. Let's see what that looks like. So, okay, so it's like that. So that's actually not bad. But we kind of wanted to do the whole row. So like in this case, it has 7 columns in the desktop. So if I were to do like span 7, for example, now it's kind of spanning the whole row. And let's just see. So if this is going to be a problem though if I switch to mobile, for example, I think. Actually, no, it's still fine. Okay. Okay, so let's actually now set new set skeleton to false by default. Where is that set? Here, false. What is this? Leaf episode. I'm building an exercise tracking app. So you can kind of see the app here. We've got, basically there's a page where you can manage your exercises. So the user creates their own exercises based on what they want to track. You can put these parameters on it. And then when you go to the today page, it's like you can add new sets where you're like, hey, I did, the 0 params exercise. And then since that has no parameters, nothing shows up. But if you pick like the 1 params exercise, and these exercises are just testing things, normally it would be named like dumbbell curl or whatever, right? But anyway, then you can edit these parameters for that given set. So you can say, I did 123 reps of the 1 param exercise today, and track your exercises like that. And you can view the historical data for them and stuff as well. But again, this is all kind of just testing data in here. So some of the, it's not the most realistic example, but that's the idea. And what I'm doing at the moment is making it so that the UI works better when somebody creates a new set for a given day. Okay, so basically before we do this fetch, we're going to want to also assign, I don't remember what I called it, new set skeleton, right. So we'll say new set skeleton equals true. Let's redo this. So this would be like if new set exercise, then new set skeleton is true, and we do this other thing. Okay. So let's try creating an exercise now. If we create everything. Okay, so it didn't, oh, I'm not even on the right page. Let's go back to the today page, add a new set. And it didn't pop up the thing. If I get rid of this fetch for a moment, refresh, add. Okay, so it's not bringing up the skeleton. I wonder if this has to be an X show, maybe. No. Also, I guess one thing we could do is we don't really need this template here. This can go right on the skeleton container thingy. Okay, so now it's just showing it. New set skeleton false. How's it doing that? Let's see. X show. So what if I did this like, instead of skeleton block, if I did like X text new set skeleton. Just curious to see what this logs. That's false. So why is it showing it? Is it being set to a string? It shouldn't be a string, right? I'm probably just missing something. New set skeleton. What if we did like, just out of curiosity? Yeah, so it is a Boolean, not a string. Let's get rid of this xtext business. And it is within the... Okay, so one problem I can see here actually is this needs to be defined in a higher X data block because this part here is not inside that div. So like this would need to be defined up here or like all the way up here. Just do a regular div X data. We could just do new set skeleton. Oops, skeleton false. And then everything has to be indented underneath that. Yep. Okay, so now that is, now this should like properly be able to set that. But why is it still showing it? Let's see. Inspect. So we have this here has display none. Okay, so that's one problem. If we use X show, then it's actually being overridden by the is flex. Now in theory, if I did X if, though, that shouldn't be a problem, right? But the X if, does that have to be like on a template? Yes. Okay, let's actually do that then. Oops, not there. We want here, template, and then we can move this X if there. Let's just get the parentheses 2. And then we should be able to get rid of that equals true thing. I just added that for debugging purposes, I guess, just in case purposes. Then we got to indent this underneath the template. And now that should properly be hiding itself, right? Yeah. But if I select to add a new set, that shows up and then it refreshes the page and then the new actual set shows up to take the place of the skeleton. One of the things you might notice, the skeleton is not the exact right height. So if let's just switch this for a moment. If we take a look, does the skeleton have like an explicit size to it? Yeah, this min height thing. But that's not really quite what I would like. Now I might be able to add the is skeleton up here on the grid. Let's just see what this, or let's actually add a skeleton here, see what that does. So instead of doing skeleton block, we're saying like this is a skeleton cell. Didn't really do much. Let's do the same thing up here maybe. Kind of curious. Nope. What about up here? Nope. What about up here? Kind of just experimenting to see if we can actually, okay, so that is actually adding a modifier, but it's not the right height once again. Okay, so this should be okay. And then if I actually just add in like a select here, then we should get it to become the right size. Sort of what I'm thinking. So underneath the cell, we would have like this. And then for the select, we could just do, like we don't need a mix in. It's just like span select and then select. And the only reason we're even really doing it like this, or span select, is just so that we get the same vertical height. And it can just be an empty select. Like that. And we don't need this. And we don't need that. Let's see what that looks like now. Okay, so now that's maybe the right height. But of course we can actually see the select for some reason. It's not being covered up by the skeleton. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't really help. Haven't done much with these skeletons in Bulma. Okay, so let's get rid of the select then. We'll have to do this a little bit more manually. And we're going to do like, what was it? Skeleton block again. Get rid of these is skeletons. Okay, so now we got the skeleton block, and I'm just going to manually adjust the height of this so it's going to match properly. So let's look at one of these rows. So each row, you know, it sizing wise, there's like the row itself, and then there's also some margin at the bottom, right? So we're going to want the height of this block to be equal to the row itself, and we're going to want to make sure that it uses the right margin at the bottom as well, below itself. So like this one, let's just see, computed. So height-wise, we're looking at 40 and margin 24. If we look at the styles, so Bulma block spacing is the margin. We can reuse that. And if I actually look at this, this should have that on it too, I guess, right? Margin bottom, Bulma block spacing. Yeah, so we don't need to actually adjust that. But we can adjust the height. So these were 40. Where does that come from? Right, 40, yep. And it comes from probably the size of the content. If I look at this one, once again, no real size thing. These don't really have a size either. What is this? Height var Bulma control height. Okay. Okay, maybe we can use that. So if I do like style, just for simplicity, I'm going to put the style right in here. Or like I could do like dot set skeleton. And then I could add a class here. Set skeleton. And this would be height. So now if I refresh this, so we have a problem here, I think, because the, like, let's look at where the thing is defined here. So we have the height, but we also have min height. So I guess I need to set that here as well. Min height to the same thing. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got our kind of skeleton control here. And we could break it out where it's like that and then like, you know, multiple skeletons, like where each input would go to make it even more kind of granular and realistic looking, but I'm not going to go that far. I think just having one skeleton for the whole row. So let's switch it back to off by default. Here. And then kind of see how it feels when we're adding a new one now. So add a new set, dunk. Then it refreshes and everything is in the right place. Still feels a bit odd in a way because it's like, let me actually rename this. I'm going to rename this from new set skeleton to creating new set. And then we can also use that for some other things. Like I want to disable this select if we're creating a new set. So if we look at the mix-ins here, after the values, or for select Alpine here, after the values, we would have something new where it's like disabled. And I think we would just put that on the select itself. Let's see though if we need to add a style maybe as well. Select. Styles. States. Ooh, I like that one. Is loading. We could add that on here. So like if, let's actually call this is loading. And so this would also have like class equals is loading. Like so. And this I think needs parentheses. Okay, let's just see what that is like. So now if I have another parameter here, which would be creating new set. And I'm realizing actually that this is not, I need to adjust this mix-in because this is like the is loading signal name. And this is going to need to use X class or X bind class. Like this. These can use single quotes in there. Okay, so now if I do this, okay, it didn't switch the state on it. Let's actually just get rid of this part for a moment. And then do it again. See what we have. Okay, so what's going on here? Okay, so I see. The is loading actually is not right. This needs to be is loading signal. Refresh. Click. Okay, so now we got the loading signal there. So that's kind of nice. But I can still interact with it. Let's see what happens if I add a attribute here. I can do that, right? Add attribute, or no. Yeah, add attribute. Disabled. Okay, that seems fine. So we can do that here, where it's like xbind disabled equals the same thing. Except this would be actually just this. So like either true or false based on that signal. So normally it's not disabled. And then if we do that, it becomes disabled. Now, do selects have a read-only style or attribute as well, I wonder. That might actually look better. Let's see. Let's just try it. Read-only. Then I pick one. It doesn't really actually work. Doesn't make it read-only like I was hoping. So we'll use disabled. That's fine. And then if we go back over here, we need to put the stuff we got rid of back in. Okay. So we're not actually getting rid of the refresh, unfortunately, but we are making it a little bit more obvious what's going on. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. Let's actually get rid of a bunch of these. And this is another place where I want to get rid of the refresh, is like when you click X, it actually reloads the page as well. And that's one where we actually can just update it client side. So I'm going to add that. But first, let's commit these changes here. So adding the set skeleton thing, updating that, and updating this. Don't need that new line really. Okay. Improve loading state when creating new set. Cool. Now let's do the deletion part. So let's see what happens here. When you delete a set, that button is going to be here. It actually is a form submission. So we're going to need to change this behavior. First of all, it's going to need to do a fetch instead of a form submission. We're going to need kind of the same logic that we have down here. I'm actually going to copy this. And here we're going to do like X on click equals this. And what we're actually going to do is post to slash or delete, right? Delete. Actually, we can update this. So as I recall, we were using that form submission to delete. And so because it was a form submission, you only have, like you can only do get and post. You can't actually do a delete method. So I'm going to update the backend route to use a delete method as well as part of this. How long have I been into web dev? A long time. I started doing web dev really back before college. So it would have been, 2010-ish maybe was around when I started doing web dev. So 15 years. It's a long time. Professionally, I've been working for like 10 years, but not so much on web dev per se. I mean, I'm kind of like a full stack engineer, I guess. I do a lot of backend stuff, a lot of front end stuff as well. But I like to do web dev stuff for my side projects because it's the easiest way to actually build an app that's kind of usable, as opposed to using like like Qt or whatever, one of those UI frameworks. I like web dev, but I often try to like experiment with new technologies for each of my apps. So with this app, it's like I'm using some new front end libraries and stuff that I haven't used before as well. Any resources that would help you get the basics down in an efficient manner? Obviously, you can Google it, but there's got to be a faster way to absorb all the info in programming. Yeah, that's a really good question, If I could give one piece of advice, it would be to like focus on building things alongside learning. So not just reading and learning, but like actually getting your hands dirty and building apps. Like even from the very beginning of like, if once you learn HTML, like start making some HTML pages, and then you can start learning JavaScript and like adding some JavaScript to it and etc. But it does take a long time. It's one of the things like with software development, you're not going to get to expert level quickly. So that would be another piece of advice, like be patient with yourself. Kind of similar to like writing a book. It's like you're not going to write a masterpiece the first time. So you just have to practice writing for a while and then eventually you get better at it, because there is just too much information to absorb quickly. That's how you are right now. You look up stuff when you need it, but there's got to be a more efficient way. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think back to how I learned web dev. I mean, in my case, like I actually was lucky enough to have a friend who knew programming already and they taught me in person. And I think that approach of like actually having a mentor, it doesn't have to be in person, but that's a really valuable way to learn if you really want to accelerate it. In terms of using online resources, I have recommendations for like backend type stuff more. There's a lot of good books to read, but for actual front end stuff, it's kind of like tough. There's so many resources, but I don't know if there's like any super good ones that I would even recommend. I use MDN a lot. MDN is like used to be owned by Mozilla. I don't even know if it still is anymore, but it's kind of like a wiki. There's a lot of information in here. And there's also like a lot of tutorials and stuff. So if I have something specific in mind, it's like I'll go to MDN to learn that. Outside of that, there are like, I don't know if you've looked at web.dev at all, but there's a lot of good documentation here as well. But ultimately, it's like any kind of structured learning is only going to get you so far. So that's why I think building the apps is probably the most important thing. But it also depends on what you want, Considering the industry is about making things easier, there's a serious lack of consideration of those who come next. Yeah, I think it's an interesting and good criticism that you're making. And like in my job, I frequently mentor people who are like new hires. And I try and assist with like onboarding documentation and stuff, but it does, like, it's a problem. Teaching software development type stuff is it's not a solved problem yet. Um, I do think part of that is like it's quite complicated, and so it's like difficult to encapsulate. But I think another part of it is like because things are changing so quickly, it's like somebody can write a be all and end all book that's super high quality, but 2 years later, it's like the information in that's going to be pretty heavily out of date. So that kind of causes an issue with it as well. It's not even hard. Get about 10 programmers. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had like my very first job out of college was a software engineering job where they actually had 3 months of on the job training after you got out of college as well. And that was some pretty good structured training, which was actually quite helpful. They didn't make a lot of assumptions about the knowledge that you were coming in with. Um, but part of the reason that that worked well is because it was within the structure of like one company. And so it's only addressing like one technology stack. And you can talk about the company standards in a coherent way. But, um, but yeah, you know, I would say just be patient, keep trucking along and try not to get too frustrated. It's always darkest before the dawn. Yeah, they hired a lot of people right out of college, which is why they had the training. So, okay, let me actually make a little progress on my app here as well. So I'm going to update my backend here. So if I go, what was I even doing? Oh yeah, deleting sets. Yeah, so let's change this from sets ID delete to delete sets ID. Another thing, like I think watching streams of people who are doing programming is actually a really good way to learn. That's why I'm streaming, is because I don't know if it's helpful to people, but I want to be able to share my process. A lot of times, just like reading, books or like talking to people, it's like you can't internalize things quite as well as like actually watching people build. And, I don't pretend to be a super expert builder, but finding kind of like a role model that you can actually watch and sort of emulate, I think is a good technique as well. A lot of, I'm kind of stuck thinking about this now, but it's an interesting thing in software development where there's a lot of like oral culture. We don't have like a really strong like written culture of explaining things. And I don't know, like I do think it's partly because they're difficult to explain and like really contextual. Like a good problem or a good solution for one problem is not necessarily going to work well at another company or with another problem, a different type of app. So it's like you really have to learn a lot of this context sensitive information. Um, and so like having conversations with people, it's like you can go back and forth, and like if there's unclear terms, you can ask, um, is really nice. Or like just watching somebody build something, it's like a really concrete example. And then you can sort of like in your mind generalize that to other examples. Just reading chat here. Yeah, it's def tough given the huge amount of langs. Yeah, lots of languages. And even within those, lots of libraries, and like they change frequently. I think the rate of change is like the biggest problem. It's like there's always new best practices coming down the pipe. So that's also why like I'm here right now. Like even as a professional software developer for a long time, like I'm still building new apps, learning new libraries, because it's like I'm always trying to, like it's not like I have to do this for my job, but a lot of times it's like if you're experimenting with these tools, then like a few years later in your job, it's like it might become relevant all of a sudden. There's been a bunch of times where stuff I've worked on in my side project has helped me at work, um, even after, so many years. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, what am I doing? So we're not going to redirect this route anymore. We're just going to send an OK. And we can just do the same thing where we delete the set. And I don't think anything else needs to change here. So then back to the front end. I'm going to delete sets slash plus, or we'll do it the same way we did here, plus set.id. And we don't need this because we're just deleting it. And then we're going to reload. But before we do that, we're also going to actually, well, let's just illustrate this. Make sure that it works like we have it. Let's inspect. Yeah, learning is good. You just wish it was more accessible. I totally relate to that. I think it's a good thing to ask for. It's just not. I mean, I don't know. There's different options. The other thing that I would say too is like, it kind of depends on what somebody's goals are as well. Like there's a lot of books in software development where it's like learn X the hard way, because it's kind of a play on the idea of like learn Python the easy way. Then there'll be like a book that's like learn Python the hard way. And it's kind of trying to highlight that idea that actually it is hard. If you really want like a deep understanding, it's going to take a long time. And it depends on what somebody's goals are. Like if you really want to be a professional software developer, for example, it's like you really have to do it the hard way, at least that's the way I think about it. But if you want to try to just like build an app, or if you have specific goals, it's like you can focus on those goals and kind of narrow down your focus a lot. And that's probably the fastest way to like actually get up and running with something. If you don't fully read the docs, then you shouldn't program. Yeah, the person who said that, they were probably just trying to like make a bit of a splash with their statement. A lot of programmers do not read docs. It's a good practice though. It's strongly recommended, but the fact that people keep recommending it is proof of how few people do it. Yeah. There's no way scrounging through these docs are the most effective way to get it done, at least ideally. Yeah, I agree. That's a lot of times if there's like a new programming language, like if there's like a book, reading the book is a lot better than going through the docs. But also like it takes a certain kind. I mean, like personally, like if I'm learning a new library or something, I like to read the docs. I'll just like open the docs on my phone and read through every single page. Like when I'm sitting on the porch or whatever. So, that works too. Okay. So now if we delete one of these, it is doing the same thing that creating one did before, where nothing happens for a moment and then the page reloads and it disappears. So that's fine, but we actually want to just straight up delete it and not reload the page. We can just remove the DOM element for that thing immediately. So like up here, we could have like I would do like X show, but the show is going to have the same issue with isFlex that I had before. Ugh. Template X if is deleted, X if not is deleted. Then this all gets indented underneath that. And I also need that X data. I might just bring this up there, like this. And then in here, we would also have is deleted, false. So now, everything should still be appearing. If I set something is deleted to true, though, it should immediately disappear. Oof. And then in the background, that network request is actually going to complete. So you can see that completes there, but we delete it from the client immediately. And then like if I refresh the page, they're still gone because we deleted them from the backend as well. Reading the docs is cool, but for a few cases, it's like reading a dictionary to find the word you're thinking of. Yeah, it's very true, especially if you're looking for something specific. And some docs are a lot better than others as well. That's part of why like cheat sheets and stuff are so common too. It's like a quick reference. Because ultimately, even once you've read all those docs, it's like you're not going to remember everything in there either. So having some way to like easily reference the most commonly used pieces of information is also important. Okay, so let's update this as well. So remove refresh when deleting sets. And as a side note too, like if, say I were to have some kind of error here. So, I tried to delete the set, but I forgot this param, this required param here. So I click delete. And as a user, like you actually get this error saying, it's not the most useful error message, but basically letting you know that the set didn't actually delete. Something bad happened. So, if I were to reload the page now, it's actually going to be back because it wasn't properly deleted from the backend. I'm so glad programming has added 13K bookmarks to my browser in 6 months. Yeah, I have a lot of bookmarks as well. I used to use Pinboard to like manage my bookmarks, and it's like, yeah, added so many. I like to read Hacker News, if you've heard of that. It's a website where there's a lot of programming related discussion, kind of like programming related Reddit, also startups and stuff. In theory, it's for like anything that satisfies intellectual curiosity or something like that. But it's a good way to find like new programming tools and stuff. So a lot of times I'll look through there and there'll be like a post about, hey, here's this new tool. And I'll just like bookmark that and accumulate a lot of bookmarks that way. And then when I start a new project, I'll go back through my list of bookmarks and be like, okay, like what are some of the new like CSS frameworks that I bookmarked that I might want to try using for this project? Stuff like that. Debugging is way more useful than you would ever think. Yeah, debugging is super useful. It's a little bit out of out of style these days, maybe. Kind of just because I think a lot of tool chains are so complicated that actually getting your debugger to work is a challenge. So these places, like if you're using like Node or something like that, it's like, yes, you can fairly easily debug your code. Once you start adding like TypeScript and other types of things, or, if your IDE doesn't have good support for it or whatever, it can be difficult. So, but if you can actually do it in your project, um, take the time to set it up. Debugging is like a superpower. It's super useful to actually see exactly what the values are at each point in the code, like the variables in the context. Um, but yeah, debugging is nice. I used to do some stuff in C sharp and like debugging C sharp with Visual Code or Visual Studio was really a much better like experience for actually finding bugs than just like trying to put a bunch of console.logs all over the place. Hacker News is not the most welcoming name of choice, but you've gone through it a bit. Yeah, the kind of Hacker News, it's referring to like a hacker in the sense of like a maker or a builder, um, as opposed to like a hacker in the sense of like a cracker who's like hacking people's computers. um, but for people who are thinking about like hacker, like the movie Hackers, it's like, yeah, they're like, why would I want to read about hackers? It's like, well, these are people who are, startup founders who are like hacking on software that they're building, not like hacking other people's software. Anyway. Oh, you do game dev? It's interesting. I've never really gotten into game dev. I can definitely imagine though. That's some pretty complicated, you know, logic and interacting components and stuff where I could see debugging being really useful. Game dev is fun. That's good. Is that kind of your goal to focus on game dev? I imagine that's even harder to learn than regular development, actually, in some ways. Um, at least, if somebody's trying to do like 3D engine games or something like that. But I actually have done in the past some types of games. My very, very first programming experience was making a game. It was like a text based adventure game, where it's like there would be like a prompt and then you would have like three options. And based on which you picked, it would like take you to some other prompt. Um, but it didn't have any graphics or anything. It was just totally text based. And, I didn't even know how to use for loops at the time. So it was just like a million prints and like ifs all arranged all over the place. And there was like nothing else in the code practically but prints and ifs. Yeah, man, it took me so long to learn for loops. That was like my biggest hang up. Um, my first programming language was Ruby. And so, like, a for loop in Ruby is like a method, and then there's like a block. And the idea that like you would have a variable in the block that like takes on a bunch of different values as you iterate over the for loop, I was like so confused by that. Yours is while loops. They don't make sense. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't have that problem with while loops quite as much. Well, actually, yeah. It's the same thing, really. It's like that looping through the same block of code a bunch of times. It's like until you build the intuition, um, it can be pretty confusing. Okay, now I've completely lost track of what I was doing. I think this is good to commit, right? Yeah, commit. Cool. Same with await. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. Async await. That's like a really confusing thing in a way. Um, like especially if you haven't learned the underlying semantics first. and just jump right into doing async await, it's like easy to introduce subtle bugs into your program, basically, I guess is the thing with that. But yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Anything that doesn't just run through, yeah, like a single threaded program is a lot easier to understand than when you actually have these like, I mean, Node is still kind of single threaded, but you have these blocks of code where they like yield control and then it comes back to the same block of code. It's confusing. And like async await, it works differently in every programming language too. Like this was added in C#, but it works differently in C# from how it does in JavaScript. It just kind of looks similar. No real CS knowledge, mostly just self-taught. Yeah, that's, there's nothing wrong with that. Like you can still get CS knowledge self-taught. It just takes time. But even when you're learning in school, it's like a lot of times, at least my experience in school, is it's like you go to the class, they give you these lectures. And like as somebody who had learned to program in high school, it's like there wasn't a lot of new information for me in the lectures. But then they assign these like program assignments. And to me, that's like the most valuable part of computer science education too, is like you get these variety of assignments where you're actually like building programs. The stuff that they teach you in class, it's like, yeah, you could just read the textbook and probably forget a lot of it eventually too, because most of it's not going to be relevant later. School provides more streamlined learning. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have the option, I would recommend school. I think actually having a degree is also like an important credential for getting a job. If that's what somebody's goal is, it helps a lot. But, if that's not an option, it definitely doesn't mean that you can't learn it, There are some courses, like I think there was supposed to be a good computer science 101 type course on MIT OpenCourseware, and also on Coursera back in the day. This was like back when I was in college. There were supposed to be some good sources or good like MOOCs they're called, where it's like a online course. I don't know what MOOC actually stands for, but it's an online course where it's like has these homework assignments, has like video lectures and stuff. That's a good way to get some of that structured learning. Yeah, MIT has one. It's pretty, like a lot of things from MIT, it's like maybe a little more intense than maybe is strictly necessary, but taking it at your own pace can be good. If I was an actual MIT student, I would be like, man, this course there's like a lot of stuff to digest for each hour-long session. It's like it covered 2 semesters of my computer science education in 1 semester, basically. Anyway, so let's see here. Remove unnecessary refreshes. I'm going to say that's done. Although there is actually another one, maybe. No, I think that's all of them. Okay. Improve manage exercises page table UI. Let me do a quick time check here. Been going for about an hour. Should have plenty of time to do this. But before I actually wanted, so it's talking about this page, the UI here is not very nice. Before I want to improve this though, I actually am going to add these timestamps. So let's do that in the database schema. I'm going to do the same thing that we have here. Got created at, updated at, on the exercises table, sets table. Got to indent that again. And I think that's it, right? It should already be on the other ones. Yeah. Okay. So one of the problems with this though is by marking these not null, is a bit of an issue because any existing exercises or sets in the database, this is going to be null. So we kind of have two options there. One is you could allow it to be null, or you could pre-fill those previous values with something, like actually set them explicitly in your migration, or you could delete them. Like in my case, because this is an app that doesn't have any users other than myself at the moment, it's like I could just clear out those tables in the database and that would be okay. But let's actually see what we get here if I do a migration. I think I have, yeah, migration run, or no, migration create, right? Yeah. So run migration generate. So this is going to create a new database migration to add my new fields here. But if I were to actually run this, I'll get an error message telling me column contains null values. So yeah, I'm just going to delete them. So if I go like open the database here, exercises. I mean, do I want to delete them? Well, whatever. Let's just delete them. So I'm going to truncate the table. Yep. And I'm going to truncate the sets table as well. Truncating is just like deleting all of the rows in the table, but not deleting the table itself. And the other ones we can leave. And then I'm going to commit these changes, which I think is this button here. I did truncate sets at the same time. Yeah, let's just check off the cascade button there. Okie doke. So now we have empty tables. I can run this, and now the migration applies successfully. Okay, so now we need to actually set these values though. Basically the created at, updated at things need to be set like whenever a new row is created or updated. Kind of obvious, I guess. I don't know. I'm wondering now if the drizzle ORM here, drizzle, has a way to set values automatically on an insert. For example, not generated columns, not set operations. What the heck is goodies? Nothing here. Seeding. Okay, don't care about that really. Let's see, maybe something under schemas. Where's the information I'm looking for here? So, yeah, stuff like this. So like, let's see what I have actually here just for my autocomplete. So I could default now. Is that kind of sounds like the kind of thing that I might want. Where can I see my documentation here? Column types. Default value. I don't know. Let's just see. Let's give it a shot. That's another thing with reading documentation is sometimes it's faster to just try it. If I add this, what is that doing now? Alter column set default now. Huh. Do I like that? I might like that. Let's try it. Let's run that migration too. And then we can do the thing and see what it does. Okay, so let's go back to my app here. So now there's no exercises. Test one param. Or let's call it dumbbell curl. Dumbbell curl. And so you saw that it was able to create it because we got to this page, which is a good sign because we have that not null constraint on those created at, updated at. So yeah, you can see that these are like set. Now, the problem is though, if I were to update this, like say I set, okay, now reps. So now it has the reps parameter, and I'll also add the weight parameter. This would be a normal configuration for dumbbell curl. And if I refresh this, it's not actually updating either of these values. So once again, if I refresh, it's like the name is updated, but it's not updating the timestamps. So that's a bit of a problem. I guess because it's setting default. So that's not really, I mean, it's not terrible to have that, but that's not actually going to do what I want. I wonder, like, I might need one of these like on update FN type things. Like if I do on update, this function will be called and the row is updated and the return value will be used as the column value if none is provided. Yeah, so this would be like on update. Date.now, I guess, right? Simple as that. Or no, it wants it to be an actual date, new date. Okay, and then I can do the same thing. Well, I guess I don't need to do the same thing for create at all. So now let's try this again. So now if I turn on, or yeah, turn wait off and back on again, and refresh this. Now the updated at is using the newer time from what I just did, and the created at is like the time from when it was created. Created at is, like I kind of want this to also actually be using a $$ default new date. Doesn't matter too much, but it's going to make sure that it's actually generated on the server instead of the database, because sometimes those can be, their time can be out of sync and stuff like that. Doesn't really matter too much though in this case, but I just want it to be consistent with create and update. So now like if I check off assisted, well, I guess we'll have to actually create a new exercise to see this. Let's call this one pull-ups, or let's call it interval sprints. Sure. Great. And this will have reps and distance or something. So if I look at interval sprints now in the database, you know, we can see they're not exactly the same, but at least they're using like the same format. Well, I guess they're not the same because I changed something, right? Of course. Anyway, so now we've got these values in here. We should see the same thing happening for sets. If I actually add a new set, oh, first I have to actually update these. So this is going to be, I'm going to use this exact same thing down here. So now if I add a new set, that thing happens. We could see the nice skeleton there. And then, what am I doing? Let's look at the set here. Refresh. And we can see, you know, created and updated. Very cool. This should actually have like a, no, yeah, that's fine. I think this might actually want a $default here as well, and then get rid of the on update. No, that's not right. Yeah, I think it's fine as is, I guess. So I don't super like that the timestamp from the database has a different level of precision, but it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got our timestamps there. Anyway, so the fact that we have these now doesn't really change anything, at least not immediately. Let's commit this stuff though. And we will call this add created at updated at timestamps for set and exercise tables. Yep. 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 And yeah, that's fine. Okay. So one thing now we need to do too before I forget here is we actually need to delete, like we truncated those tables locally, but I need to truncate those tables remotely as well. So like I think I can do something like like fly control, Postgres, fly control, Postgres, connect, app, exercise, tracker, DB. Oh, it's got to update itself. Yes, allow it to do the thing. Fly MPG. That's interesting. Maybe I should try that at some point. But anyway, so now I should be able to like, let's see, select star from exercise. I need to change my schema or something. The exercise tracker list. exercise underscore tracker. No, how do I select a certain database? I don't remember. Let's see. PG CLI open database. Yeah, so this is telling me how to, I mean, it's saying you need to run it kind of at startup. Let me add a help flag here and see if, okay, so it would be like -d exercise tracker. Okay, so now if I do select star from exercise, what's the table called? Exercises with an S. It's our test exercise. And if I do select star from sets, there's nothing in there. So I just need to truncate exercises. Truncate exercises cascade. So now if I select star from exercises, there's nothing in there. And from sets, there's nothing in there too. Okay, so we cleaned up our database. Just a little manual cleanup so that when we deploy this change, it's actually going to be able to run the migrations on the remote deployed version of the app. Okay. So I guess let's check that off my notes. Yep. Okay, so now we want to allow sorting exercises. I guess let me pull that into a separate one here. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to the settings page, or the manage exercises page, I mean. And we will do some improvements here. Now that we actually have timestamp on the exercises, we can use that in this page as well. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, this thing is just like a series of, it's like each of these rows is like a grid, but it doesn't really need to be a grid. And so I kind of want to make this be more of like a table situation. Where's my, development documentation? Let's see what we have here. So there's table. I could use an actual table, or I could just kind of make it look more tabular. I guess is kind of what I'm thinking. It might not hurt to use an actual table here. So let's go ahead and do that and just see what it looks like. Well, do I want a table? I don't know. Let's just try it. Give it a shot. So we need like table.table, and then there's like t body. And then, we just do our rows. So it would be like tr, or like each exercise in exercises have a row for that exercise. And there would be a data element with the exercise.name. And then there would be another data element, which is going to have the buttons. Let's just see what this looks like. It's like that. Yeah, I mean, it looks a little short, but that's all right. Like a little narrow, I guess is what I mean. It's not very wide because there's not like a long exercise name. But if I were to make this is a really, 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 really long exercise name. Let's see what it does with that. Guess it just doesn't seem that long when you're looking at it like this, but you like the table resizes to fit that larger name. Seems all right. And maybe we want this full width as well. Let's just see what that's like. Is full width. So that's like this now, which is okay, but I want that second data. Well, let's just see here. So one of the other things I want to do here is actually add text to these. So like this is going to be chart line and it can be like history. I think like this, history. Yeah, but I need another space. And it's not quite right. But that's the kind of thing that we want to do. Let's see for button if there's like a special thing to do for that. Icon plus text in a button. Doesn't seem like it should be that special. So there's a button. So I guess we need the span class icon. We have that. And then there needs to be another span. I see. Span history. Yeah, okay, that's better. So we've got history, and then we also have span edit. And these can be put into a group. Is this what it's called? Button group? No. Let's see. So what I want is to have them be like kind of, so here's button group. I want these add-ons. So it'd be like field has add-ons. And then beneath that, we need controls. So like dot control. And then another dot control. Okay, and now you can see how kind of like the border now between them is, there's no rounding there. They're like combined together. So that's good. If we switch to light mode, looks fine there as well. Yep. And I might actually switch the order of these. Doesn't really matter too much, but let's do that. And I might even add a delete button here as well. And here I'm going to do like a, I don't know. I want this stuff to be like left aligned or right aligned. I mean, in the TD, like if I add something where it's like text align right, it's not actually going to help anything, right? I want to align the content in it to the right. So I know I can do that with flex. What I don't understand is like why this is even growing exactly. It has to do with the magic of tables, I guess. Um, hmm. Which makes me think that maybe we don't really want a table after all. Is there a way to, let's see, mdntd. Don't need call span or row span. I would need something like a width. Let's see what happens if I put an explicit width on here. Like width 10 rem. So now that cell is just, it almost looks like that's exactly the right kind of width here. What if I do, I'm curious, what if I do 5 rem? Okay, so that actually still works. Is it, I guess it's almost like a minimum width. Okay, let's just do that for now. Width or style, width 5 rem. Okay, so now we've got our exercise list here. And, you know, it's going to kind of resize. We can kind of give it a max. Might be good to give it some kind of max width too, though. I think we can do that with something here. Like this is probably as wide as we want it to be. Max width of is max desktop. So let's do that. So if we do like a container, actually, dot container and is max desktop, and then put the table in there, that should kind of limit the width to something more reasonable. Yeah. And actually, you know, I kind of want, well, let's put this container on the whole page. And then this table needs to get unindented again. Okay. Okay, so that's good. And, you know, if I go mobile view, that's looking pretty good as well. It wraps the name properly underneath the table row. Yeah, so let's get rid of the old one here. We don't need this anymore. Okie doke. And what else? Oh yeah, we were going to add filtering to this page as well. So, you know, when you just have 3 exercises, it's kind of pointless, but you could imagine if somebody is using the app, you know, people might have dozens of different exercises that they're tracking. And so having some ability to like sort or filter or whatever this list when they're managing those could be useful, kind of what I'm thinking. So I might add a drop down here. We're kind of trying to make this a bit smarter of a table. So instead of each exercise in exercises, we're actually going to bind that on the client, json.stringify exercises. And then here we're going to have a template for exercise in exercises. And this is going to be, x text exercise.name. This is going to be like x bind ref is exercises plus exercise ID, like this. And the same thing down here, except also with the historical on it. And that should be good. Let's see what that is like now. Okay, so it's doing the right thing. And now that that's all bound client side, we can actually like adjust the order of these things dynamically. So like up here, we could add like a drop down. Let's add a drop down on top of the table. And if I just check our historical page, I have a drop down here. I'm just going to kind of copy this because it's a little similar. And instead of show look back, this is going to be show sort by. And this is going to be span sort by, and then I'm actually going to do another span. Or no, let's do it like this. Span x text equals sort by space plus sort by key. And this will also have up here x data sort by key. Is something. For now, I'll just do name. Okay. So let's see what that looks like now. So sort by name. The chevron, that's a little bit wonky. I think I need actually like a span dot icon here as well, right? And then that, yeah, fixes that up. And so now in the dropdown, we would have some other options. So like sort by name, sort by created, sort by last. Let's say last updated, and we could have last used, recently used, and recently updated. Okay, and so these are going to be setting that sort by key. So this one, sort by key equals name. And we'll do the same thing here and here, except it's going to be recently used and recently updated, which I'm actually going to call updated app. And we'll call this recently used, like that. Okay. I can get rid of this control as well. So now, like if I look at this, it's got sort by name. If I check recently used, yeah. Let's actually just call it recently used and recently updated. So there's name, recently used, and recently updated. And I'll just call it used and updated, maybe. Sort by used, sort by updated. I don't know if I should call used something else. Basically, this is going to be like the sorting it by when a set was most recently created for that exercise, which we don't actually have yet, that information in the page. Maybe I'll just comment that out for a moment and implement that after the other ones. So for updated, basically we just need to reorder this exercises array. Also, we need to add an ID exercise.id so that Alpine is going to let us sort that properly. And then this would be like exercises dot sort by, or dot to sorted, right? And then we've got like A and B. And it's going to, let's leave that on the same line, I guess. So I kind of have a choice here. I can implement this myself, in which case we would be like return, like if, let's pull this into an actual helper function, because I feel like it's going to get a little complicated. If we go into our main code here, we can do like export function sort exercise it, and we get an array of exercises, and we get a sort key. So like if sort key, or we could say like return exercises dot to sorted. Yeah, maybe I'll put the conditional outside. So like if sort key equals name, then we're going to sort by the name, right? Else if, and maybe we should do a case here. Might be nice. Case or a switch, sort key, case name, return exercises dot to sorted. And then this would be like to sorted A, B, and it returns something. Going to do the same thing for name, used and updated. Okay. And then default is just going to be return exercises. Let's just do that as the unsorted option. Okay. So if the name, we need to compare them alphabetically. Which I don't know if that's actually what we'd be doing. Let's see. MDN alphabetical sort. Is there a way to do this? I know how to sort. Yeah, UTF-8 code units order. So kind of the problem with this is it's case sensitive. So like an A, uppercase A, is sorted to a completely different place than lowercase a because they're two different code points. So I'm actually going to start with like return a dot name dot to lowercase less than b dot name dot to lowercase, right? Because if it's greater than 0, then a goes after b. So like if a is earlier, it should return less than 1, right? I always find that confusing. Well, let's just see how it looks. And used and updated, we'll just implement those next. But let's see how this one works first. Didn't like something. Let's actually just comment those out for the moment. Oh, right. I forgot to update my conditional in the actual template. So this, instead of exercises.to sorted, it would be like window dot underscore set dot sort exercises. And then we'd also have sort by key. Right? Window dot underscore set dot sort exercises. Oh, I forgot to add it here, right? Yep. Okay, so now it's sorted in theory by name. So it's like dumbbell curl, interval sprint. You know, it looks like it's sorted by name right now. If I were to create a new exercise and call this like ASDF, is this going to go on first? No. So it was just coincidence that it was sorted before. If I switch it to updated, oh, that's weird. Don't like that. Hmm. Let's see. Console.log, exercises, sort key. Let's see if we're getting anything interesting in here. So it's array and then it's name. So it should be in here. Huh. What? So each of these exercises, So the weird thing to me is this array, which is supposed to be sorted by the name, is not. Like the ASDF is at the end when it really shouldn't be. I don't know if I switch it to sort. Is it going to work now? Well, now it's sorting the proxy array in place. let's see something. Bun REPL ASDF less than, or let's say like A less than BBB is true. So that would be sorted first. If I do like CAA, then it's false. I mean, it seems like it should be working. So what am I missing here? Do I need to do like sorted exercises? No, that shouldn't matter. Hello, first time chatter. Elixir, what are you going to use for backend? Not Elixir. I'm using Node, well, technically Bun, JavaScript runtime for the backend. And for the front end, I'm using alpine.js to do like interactivity. But basically, the app is using the Node for the backend or Bun with the Express library to implement a server. And it's kind of a fairly standard server where, you know, some of the pages are views that are rendered with Pug templates, and other ones are like API routes. And then, you know, we have some client-side JavaScript that calls the API routes and so on. So basically, kind of an old-fashioned server rendered application with some added client-side interactivity is the idea. But I'm having an issue getting this to sort. I wonder, let's see. So if I do AA dot name dot to lowercase b dot name dot to lowercase, trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong here. Okay. ASDF. I mean, I don't think, what if I switch it around? I'm kind of curious. It doesn't change anything. Why is this so weird? So if I do like ASDF B SDF dot to sorted, this, paste. Oh, I didn't like it pasted as multiple lines, I guess. Let's see. dot. Let's paste it as one line this time. Paste as one line. Okay, well, it sorted it backwards. An error occurred. ToSorted is not defined. Oh, right, because of this weird snippet I had there. Let's get rid of that. Okay. But why is it not sorting it? Oh, this is interesting. I actually use Sortable.js in my app. So this plugin might be a useful thing at some point, but this isn't really what we want because this is for user drag and drop sorting. Really, I mean, the for should. So one thing I'm thinking is like maybe I need to I don't know. So like I'm thinking, maybe this needs to be bound into another expression, like sorted exercises. And then I could have another thing where it's like, say here, doesn't really matter. Next data, sorted exercises, set to that. So, I mean, that's an option, right? But it still shouldn't. Man, I'm so confused why it's not sorting. Let's do just out of curiosity, if this just returns, say, an empty array, so it is doing the thing and it's using the value that's returned from that. It's just this ToSorted thing is not working as I would expect. ToSorted is supposed to return an array that's sorted without mutating the original array. And it has a method for that in the browser. Now, I guess for this, I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that the array is a proxy object, but I mean, should it? Should that be a problem? Let's see. Maybe this is a problem someone else has run into before as well. They're just saying to use sort. And what if what if rather than assigning this, well, yeah, let's see. So I could just return exercises at the end and then do like exercises.sort break. So now I'm actually returning the exact same object here. Does that help at all? Sorted exercises. No, it does not help. Or does it? Let me try if I do this. And then this. Yeah, it's definitely not. Kind of curious. What happens if I get rid of some of these or like add some stuff on there? Yeah. Okay, so it still should be sorting it. It's just not for some reason. Well, not sure what I'm missing here. Some kind of problem. Still, let's just ignore that for a quick moment and actually fix some of these things here. So one problem is like these, like I can click on this and it's updating the different values, but it's not actually closing the dropdown. Do I have that same problem for history as well? Like if I click on this, it doesn't actually close unless I click something in here. And even then it's probably only because I'm reloading the page. So these should actually be setting like show sort by equal false in all of these as well. Yeah. So now if I do like sort by recently used, it actually closes the thing. I also want this to have a certain amount of padding on it. So you see how it's not like aligned there? That's kind of what I want to address. So, and I'm mostly just doing this right now because I don't have a lot of time left. I don't know if I'm going to fix the sorting issue today because I still don't really understand why that's not working. But I can at least fix some other things here. So these, this button group has some padding. And that is this, that 12. Where does that 12 come from? Bulma table cell padding. I might actually just copy that exact thing and put it up here. Float rate, padding, all my table saw padding. Oh, I see. That doesn't, because it's Bulma table cell padding is not defined. Let's, if I do like class, I guess I could do it over here. Like this would be dot table sort. And if I add a class for that, dot table sort with the padding and with float right, is it going to be defined now? Yeah, so now it's got the padding, but maybe I actually want that to be a margin. I guess that's just not defined in this context somehow, that variable. So let's see, what actually is that? Bulma table cell padding. 0.5 EM, 0.75 EM. I might just copy that here. Yeah, so now it's aligned. I don't care so much about like the top bottom padding, which is the 0.5. It's more that 0.75 to get it horizontally aligned with these other buttons. Actually, vertically, I might want this to be like 1 EM. Let's do like 0, 0.75, 1 EM, 0.75. So this is top padding or margin, top margin, right margin, bottom margin, left margin. Cool. But yeah, now we just need to figure out why the sorting isn't working. Oh well. Oops. Hit save in the wrong spot. Okay. Well, let's get rid of the console log. And I'll just get rid of that default case altogether. It's not doing anything. And I'll get rid of those cases too for now. Well, let's leave those for now. And we can add like a to do. This function isn't actually sorting the array properly for some reason. And we could call this improve UI for exercise list page. I would like to solve this sorting issue. I do feel like it's one of those things that's just kind of like, I must just be missing something really dumb. Another option that we have is like I could use Lodash. I'm kind of curious to see if this works. Normally, I don't like to install new dependencies for something that you can just implement with a few lines of code, but I kind of want to see if this Lodash dependency is going to help us here. Like this is the kind of thing that we would want to use, like sort by. Creates an array of elements sorted in ascending order by the results of running each element in a collection through iterative. So it calls this function. I mean, that should work. Let's just try it. And to install this, it would be like you can install the whole Lodash package, or I think I can install, let's see, Lodash sort by. I think I can install like this specific one. Yeah, Lodash.sort by. And then in the front end here, I would do import sort by from Lodash.sort by. And then down here, we would do sort by exercises. And it would be like e.name.to lowercase. And we would return that, I guess, right? Let's see if that is doing something. Okay, so that actually did sort it by the name, see? And if I switch it to something else, like let's do updated now. And then I'm actually going to do default return exercises again. Get rid of that. So like for updated, it would be like e.updated at. And for used, it would be something we don't have. So let's just comment that out for now. Get rid of the break. Get rid of this. Okay, so now it's sorted by name, and we could switch it to sorted by updated. Did it, did it switch the sort type? Let's see if I do, I'm going to do this again. Exercises, sort key. Okay, so that's sorted by name. If I switch it to recently updated, it's not even doing the thing again. It's not even rerunning the thing. What if I do that here instead? Name, updated. Okay, so yeah, so now it is. So we can sort by updated. We can sort by name. We can't sort by used. So I'm actually just going to comment that out. We're going to need to load a little additional data for that, and I don't really have time to do that in this session. Okie doke. So I don't really know why the Lodash sort by works better, but it is also easier to use, so I'm just going to use that. And let's see, if I console.log, Did I leave any of these around? Yeah, let's get rid of all these. Get rid of that one. Those ones we're supposed to have. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so now sorted by name or sorted by recently updated. And like if I edit this one, and do sort by recently updated, now that one should be at the bottom. Now, I don't, yeah, that's, I actually want this to be reversed. So recently updated is at the top. Unfortunately, sort by doesn't have a way to sort by another direction, does it? Is there an option to sort by descending? Doesn't seem like it. Now, though, that I've reversed it, it should, yeah, it's got the most recently edited on top. Okay. Let's add that to the commit. Yeah, commit staged amend. Okay, well, with that, I think I'm going to push my changes and call it a day. Yeah, cool. Thanks, y'all. See you next week.